Hi guys, welcome back to another video. I am Lemon Cat Podfic, and today we are going to be reading Show Them All by Pistachia over on AO3. This is a TBHX fic. This is Bowa and Jin, the head of the commission. This is a no archive warnings apply and a fem/fic. Summary: your loyalty. Why on earth would I need your loyalty? Bowa, you aren't loyal even to yourself. Jin laughs briefly. Your destiny is bleeding out in the need to follow someone else's orders. When you first joined my bodyguard unit, I thought this would suit me well. There's nothing more to it than that. Her laugh is dry and deep. Bowa hates that she looks at her teeth, that she remembers their marks on her chest, on her shoulder, on her collarbone, where a bullet would later strike. Loyalty, subservience, and where all of this leads Bowa. The author does have a few starting notes. The information about the attack on the head of the commission being staged by Bowa is based on the Chinese dub. Her profile: sharp cheekbones, piercing eyes, small wrinkles at the corners, meticulously styled hair, is the first thing Bowa sees when she wakes up. Bowa doesn't even speak to her. She just stays silent, beginning to feel her body, fractures, lacerated flesh, a faint dizziness, a sign of blood loss, a parched throat, pain in her eyes, a throbbing scar on her collarbone, pierced anew. She begins to sense sounds: the beep of devices, the siren of a cleaning machine outside the window, the hum of blood in her temples, a quiet, confident voice discussing the latest report on Spotlight's growing influence in FOMO, and fear metrics seeping through social media into the world. She feels the light sounds of her own breathing, devoid of even the slightest irregularity. She hears the rustle of the fabric on her layered clothes. She senses the faint scent of cologne on the tip of her tongue. Black tea, bergamot. Bowa hadn't been this close to her in a long time. She was glad not to be. Jin, without looking up from her phone call, pours her some water and hands her the glass. Her posture is still impeccably straight. She doesn't even look at her. Everything about her exudes an endless confidence in her unconditional ownership of Bowa, and Bowa's inability to harm her. This gesture triggers a wave of fury in Bowa's chest, flowing through her scorched lungs like lava. How many years have passed, and then another 10 out of her command, yet a single movement of those pale fingers is enough for her to feel once again like the youngest female agent in the commission, responding to her every command like a dog begging for affection. Every cell in her body is relaxing, finally returning, and there is nothing in this world that can evoke the mixture of a plea, sickening fear, and a muteness as disgusting as Jin does. "The fuck are you doing here?" Bowa snaps. The bitterness of this hatred becomes unbearable, corroding her veins from within and flowing through them along with her blood. "I'll call you back," Jin says curtly, and hangs up. Slowly, she shifts her gaze to Bowa. As always, it's impossible to say if there's a specific expression touching her face. There's always that barely perceptible pause in her, one you could only learn to see by getting too close to her, a slight hesitation before she chose what she was going to show. Bowa remembered how, at 19, an unbearable itch would run through her skin whenever she saw that imperceptible shift. How strong was her urge to be the cause of it, how unbearably she would clench her teeth in the hope that one day those lips would tremble in an approving smile immediately, rather than after a fraction of a moment. With difficulty, raising her palm, trembling from the effort, she pushes Jin's hand away. The water barely moves in its glass, barely spilling over the rim. Bowa's stomach twists from her own weakness. Jin doesn't sigh or complain about her refusal. Her hand grabs Bowa by the jaw, yanking her towards her, and she presses the glass to her lips. Bowa twitches helplessly, recoiling, but the fingers tighten, and the woman's pupils narrow. Water flows down her throat, sliding over the burns from the explosions and the acrid smoke. Tears well up in the corner of her eyes. Your time at DOS hasn't benefited you, Jin mutters, wiping the water from her cheek. Her voice isn't directed at Bowa. She's more speaking to herself. Bowa starts coughing, trying to pull away. Mickey didn't train you at all, did he? Those are the first words they've exchanged in nearly 10 years, except for brief greetings and nods when they've crossed paths in the Commission's building's hallways. The moment Jin utters them, Bowa feels as if she's being pulled back into the sea by a receding wave, erasing all her efforts to claw her way up the wet and towards the shore. Bowa grits her teeth, refusing to let it affect her. The device beeps unpleasantly, betraying how fast her heart is racing. Don't even try those tricks on me. At least make the effort to come up with something new. Jin raises her perfectly shaped eyebrows. Why? The old ones still work. Her thumb remains on Bowa's cheek. She remembers how she used to take her fingers into her mouth and choke on them in an attempt to please, how they squeezed her breasts, how they stretched her from the inside, too quickly, and the pain of that burning sensation lingered in her for days, while she stood behind her at meetings, while she walked, shielding her as part of her bodyguards. She remembers what it was like to rest her temple on the bare stomach and feel those fingers lightly brush against strands of hair. She remembers too much. When asked about her name, her father once told her that water remembered everything. He and her mother thought that was beautiful. A cursed name. Jin's hand glides further, her knuckles tracing her neck, the edge of her palm brushing her collarbone, over the scar that burns like fire. She touches her breast, moving down towards her thigh. Bowa's breath catches slightly. Get out of here. The words scratch at Bowa's throat. Her fingers rake at the sheets. Unless you're planning to take me to jail personally, then get lost. You came here to interrogate me about the port and in person, no less. I have nothing to talk to you about. Her demands mean nothing to this woman. They're like the buzz of a mosquito. Jin's fingers return to her collarbone. Bowa swallows. Shame burns every cell in her throat as she feels her thighs tremble, her breath falter. And Jin, of course, sees it too. There's no other person who knows her body better. Fate is so ironic, isn't it? Jin lightly strokes the bandage over the scar. A scar from a bullet meant for Jin, from a spear aimed at someone else's target, for which Bowa was simply an obstacle in the way. They say lightning never strikes the same place twice. That's a myth, of course. But out on the open sea, lightning strikes the same spot far more often than on land. Water, especially salt, is a conductor of electricity. Lightning will strike it, and then strike the same spot again, since the air there will already be ionized. There's a certain symbolism in that, don't you think? Bowa hates her. Her chatter, queen. Fear could have turned that hatred within her into something useful, brought it out into the open. But still, it is her very essence. Hatred pulses through every electrical surge in her body, every beat of her heart, every breath she takes. Queen knows where to strike, Jin remarks. Her fingers vanish from Bowa's collarbone, and every muscle in Bowa twists with the desire to pull her back. Her eyes narrow. Did Queen survive? Of course. Jin smiles slowly. Her nails lightly scratch the skin of her neck as she returns the touch. Bowa clenches her teeth against a flash of heat in her stomach. Did you really think it could be any other way? Did you want her to survive? Did you want her to die? Bowa would have liked Queen to choke to death on the mud. I told you to get lost, Bowa hisses. Get your hands off me. Why? I found this amusing, Jin says, tapping the bandage over the fresh wound with her knuckles. Bowa arches in pain, almost screaming. You got that scar when, failing to get the position you dreamed of by fair means, you staged a fake attack, protecting me from its bullet. You got the second scar on top of it after failing to get the position you dreamed of by fair means, and trying to blame Queen for what you yourself are actually guilty of. Lightning keeps striking the same spot in the sea, and you are incapable of changing, no matter how hard you try to alter the circumstances around you. You can't run from yourself. Is that how they say? It's as if she's being hurled into the depths of the ocean when she fully grasps the meaning of her words. For a few moments, Bowa can't breathe. Slowly, without moving, she turns her gaze towards her. Jin meets her eyes with her own, clear, almost bored. The device screams as Bowa's heart races like a storm in her chest. Her limbs go limp. For a couple of moments, every sound inside her falls silent. She knows only the faint crackling of salt pulsing in her chest. She knows that I organized the attack. Bowa swallows. Pitiful, insignificant. Bowa can't breathe. "Don't play these games," she wheezes, trying to drown out that loathsome whining in her head. You betrayed her. She knows you betrayed her. You'll never be hers again. So you know? What does that matter to me? Yes, I did all that, and I'd do it 100 times over. How many times have you sent me to hell? You were ready to kill me for your own game. Don't try to make me feel guilty for the one time I did the same. Shut up, Jin says. Bowa doesn't notice her moving. The next second, she's right next to her. Her elbow presses against Bowa's throat. Raise your voice one more time, and I'll rip your tongue out. And, the worst part, Bowa actually falls silent. Not because of the threat, but because of the order itself. Because of the person who utters it. Hatred swells in her chest, crashing in waves against her ribcage, freezing into shards of salt. And yet, she remains silent. Sweet girl, Jin sighs. Her elbow is still pressing against her trachea. Bowa's vision begins to darken from lack of air. Did you really think there's anything going on in the commission that I don't know about? Or did you at least think you could keep this up for years? I knew you'd try to pull this off, even before you realized it yourself. You don't know anything, Bowa hisses. What a load of crap. If you're trying to manipulate me, at least do it smartly. If you knew, would you have let me get all the glory I deserved and recommended me to the DOS? Jin's eyebrows rise, almost in amusement. Do those things contradict each other? Bowa's vision darkens with hatred. So now, of course, you're going to claim that this was all some deep and subtle plan to set me up with Mickey, using my goal of becoming a hero to get rid of you, and then use it when the time comes? Yeah, right. I'll never believe that nonsense. She laughs hoarsely. But of course, after all, the head of the commission is perfect and flawless, never makes mistakes. You just can't admit that you missed this, that you failed to use your influence over me. Bowa. She had forgotten how much she hated her name, how much she hated the fact that it belonged to this woman. You've always overestimated your worth, but this is getting ridiculous. It feels as though she's being hurled once again through the shards of containers by arrows of gold. She chokes on the air, coughing. Jin stares intently into her eyes, and Bowa can't break that gaze. What she fears most is that Jin will read her, by the memorized pattern, by every crack she made herself with such care. But then, is there any point in being afraid? Bowa knows better than anyone that this is exactly how it is. Overestimating the value, she whispers. It's funny now that the head of the commission is sitting in my ward, knowing that I was more than ready to kill her. People are inherently defined by their selfishness towards the things that belong to them. Jin shrugs absently. Her hand rises and buries itself in Bowa's hair. She squeezes gently, forestalling her response. Why wouldn't I come here? It's not about your worth. It's about me coming to pick up my own. Where? To prison? How delightful. Bowa laughs barkingly. I've really earned this honor. The head of the commission herself will be my escort. I've come this far. Don't even think about saying none of this belonged to me, to mislead me again and use me for some bullshit now that you've suddenly remembered me. I fought tooth and nail for this, and I'm never going back. Bowa hates that she can't say anything else. She hates this feeling, the fact that she stands beneath her, that every word she speaks breaks in her throat like stones, while they flow like liquid iron down Jin's throat. She hates how her body, as if returning home with long-awaited joy, suddenly falters. Her gaze drops, the line of her shoulders breaks, and the words, "Did I do well? Do you still want to keep me by your side?" presses against her tongue, a craving she has spent years erasing from herself. But a single phrase from this woman, addressed to her, and still the same ever-impassive face of Jin, devoid of any hint of approval or disappointment. She'd rather have been hit directly, rather have been humiliated outright, rather have her eardrums torn by a scream. Anything, at least something human. But Jin looks just as distracted as ever, and Boa's insides twist into familiar knots until the urge to vomit rises in her throat. Her whole skin feels tight, like a film of salt after seawater. "Are you angry that I let you pursue your goal? That I let you leave? Would you really have preferred it if I'd put you in your place back then?" Jin says. Boa shudders violently. "Of course, I could have done that, but our current outcome seems far more stable to me in the long run. People may deny it, try to preserve what remains of their honor, but the truth is that most of them, if not all, need the opportunity to acknowledge someone else's superiority over themselves and to place their fates in those hands. Whether out of love or fear, that need remains constant. They can't bear freedom, and at the same time, people are proud and greedy in that pride by their very nature." Jin enunciates every word, yet she sounds as if she was singing a song. She knows, Boa thinks. She knows all of this. She knows it by heart. She knows it so well that each of those words snaps something inside her. The faint taste of cynicism in her mouth when Boa kissed her, an unconditional belief in the necessity of control, no matter how harsh and cruel it may turn out to be. All for the sake of a good she considers supreme, without wasting time on questions of ethics and doubt. "Are you trying to give me a lecture on psychology?" Boa squeezes out, cutting her off. It brings no pleasure. On the contrary, the ingrained sense of her own insignificance, of being second-rate compared to her, only settles deeper in her chest, like clumps of sand. "Do I need to order you to be quiet?" Jin asks. It's almost polite. It sends shivers of terror through Boa's veins, because she hears everything that remains unsaid. "Do you want to see how quickly you'll obey this time, or will you surrender yourself now, clinging to your false hope of having some pride left?" Boa swallows. She doesn't say a word, but Jin knows her answer. "So, in your opinion, what's the best way to shatter this false sense of freedom, defined by nothing more than some feeble attempt at pride, which would give them an excuse at least? I resisted. I didn't give in so easily." How can one unconditionally assert control? Years in DOS should give you an understanding of what I'm talking about. Let them get what they want, knowing that it won't bring them freedom, but will only push them further to the bottom. Isolate them, Jin says. Boa had forgotten how much the dry harshness of her gaze had always angered her. Never, not with her fingers inside her, nor with her tongue between her thighs, had she felt that this woman perceived her. Her fingers twist Boa's hair tighter around her fist. She whimpers through clenched teeth. Leave their minds in silence. Let them freeze, stiffen, stripped of struggle, and then grow scabs in this solitude. Driven mad in this way, any resistance within them will be destroyed. After that, will there be any substance left in the rebellion? Nausea rises in a lump in her chest. So this is what it all comes down to. She swallows, her throat tight. The worst part is that she understands what Jin is talking about. Boa shivers slightly. It makes so much sense. Why did she only think of this now? Why did she so easily let herself be deceived into believing that she could, in any way unknown to anyone but herself, defeat this woman? Pathetic, Jin's voice repeats in her head. I think I can do something about this. To heal. Of course, for all your merits, I will provide you a letter of recommendation. It feels as though every vessel in her body is being squeezed by a strand of the spider web in which she is irrevocably entangled. Most people need a leader who would reduce them to the role of a sheepdog or a part of the flock. Perhaps you need more than this, but that's not really something to be ashamed of. You've always needed direction, like the ghostly light of a lighthouse amid stormy waves. Without it, you would have drowned. Someone to guide you. You were and are lost, just like now, but you refused to accept this for so long. Her sigh sounds more like a sneer than if she had laughed. But I figured that since that's the case, there'd be no harm in letting you face it head on. What's a decade to me? I hope you've had your fill of playing the hero by now. Rage leaves crimson stains of pain before her eyes. Bowa lets out a growl, contorting every muscle in her body as she moves and pushes Jin beneath her. The hospital sheets crumple, dripping remnants into the IV stand. Her fingers clench on Jin's shoulders. Had my fill? I'm no longer a first-year cadet at your feet. I forged my own destiny. You'll never have my loyalty, Bowa snarls, baring her teeth. Her forearms tremble with weakness. Never. Got it? Go to hell with your schemes, your deep thoughts. Maybe I failed again, but I really can't achieve anything on my own. But at least you won't be the one I let decide for me. I don't give my loyalty away for free, and heaven knows you have nothing to pay for it. I still have my pride. I refuse to be your violent dog on a leash again, one you can unleash on an enemy at a moment's whim with a simple "get" command. Your loyalty? Why on earth would I need your loyalty? Bowa, you aren't even loyal to yourself. Jin laughs briefly. Your destiny is bleeding out in the need to follow someone else's orders. When you first joined my bodyguard unit, I thought this would suit me well. There's nothing more to it than that. Her laugh is dry and deep. Bowa hates that she looks at her teeth, that she remembers their marks on her chest, on her shoulder, on her collarbone, where a bullet would later strike. She remembers how her hair fell back just like that before, how her throat bared, how her thighs cramped with pleasure. Jin moves and yanks Bowa up by the hair, wringing an agonizing scream of pain from her. Her elbow presses into the mattress as she leans in, pushing harder. As far as I'm concerned, we're both past the point where we could consider you capable of loyalty. To me, to yourself, or to anyone else. I don't need your loyalty, Jin says, enunciating every word clearly. I need your submission. That's what people say when they can't get what they want to begin with, Bowa hisses through the pain. Does it hurt to admit defeat? Slowly, Jin smiles. She's never smiled at me before. The most pathetic and dependent part of Bowa says, I must have done something right. She'll let me stay. That's why I've always liked you. You're different. Her fingers tug at strands of her hair, then run through them almost tenderly. Unveiled, all fangs and screams. It was a pleasure to mold you into what I wanted to see. She doesn't even say anything meaningful or important. In what world could this be called a compliment? But something inside Bowa jerks sharply, then throbs and throbs. Heat flows between her legs, twisting into knots and almost folding her in half. She feels an incredible humiliation squeezing her lungs and constricting her blood flow as she senses tears gathering in the corners of her eyes. But her heart is burning, and salt is stinging her skin. She thinks about how 10 years have passed since she felt the warmth of that frozen marble against her skin. 10 years, and she stands here again, unchanged. She doesn't even have any particular thoughts. Suddenly, X's title, Mickey's threats, Queen's endless tricks, smiles, mockery, and amusement, unable to grant her even the basic respect of an opponent, and the appearance of X, destroying fates with a mere snap of his fingers, all seem like nothing more than a dream. Indeed, maybe that was the whole point, why she allowed herself to be so easily deceived, believing she could escape this woman's influence. She wanted to dream for a little longer. and then a single blow to the collarbone crushed her and flung her out, leaving her gasping for air with seawater in her lungs on the shore at Jin's heel. Slowly, Jin looks up at her. She is still lying beneath her, just as before, when Bowa slid her tongue between Jin's hips, when she kissed her neck, when she pressed against her lips. And yet, as always, Bowa feels infinitely lower than her. Vaguely, she realizes she no longer feels that searing rage. The hatred subsides. 10 years twist and wash away like footprints in the sand. Her shoulders slump at their usual uneven angle, full of submission, as she gives up trying to hold them up, without at least outwardly giving in. "Do you want to go back, Bowa?" Jin asks. That's how people ask when they already know the answer. Bowa is silent, her gaze lowered. Her chest trembles rapidly with dry sobs. She bites her lip. Jin reaches out and kisses her. Only then does Bowa wonder why she didn't do this sooner. Then, a faint pang of pride vanishes before it even has a chance to flare up. Then Bowa wouldn't have wasted time on pointless resistance, trying to stand her ground. All Jin had to do was touch her, and no words of hers would have ever been needed. Her body would have bowed its head before her far faster than her mind did. Her lips carry salt in this almost tender touch. Bowa feels as if she's almost choking on it, the movement of the tongue over her teeth along the inside of her mouth, fingers at the vein in her neck, each confident touch. Jin moves, and Bowa remains seated on her thighs. Her thumb touches the corner of her eye, wiping away a tear, and this touch seems to wake her from a wonderful dream. This touch feels like a return to the sea.